there. Many Constant Worlds is a podcast following the meta disjointed journey through the Dark Tower series by Stephen King.
I'm Taryn, they, them, your unreliable guide.
And I am Kat, she, her, wandering blindly through the desert behind Taryn.
Does that make me the man in black here? If you're just wandering blindly after me?
I think it might, yeah.
Do I wear enough black?
You have started wearing a lot more black in recent years.
That's fair. I'm old now, and that's kind of just what... Like, that's how you hide. Like, the aging process. Okay, I'm sorry.
I guess it sounds like you are the man in black now.
I should be more angry about this, but again, I'm old now, and I'm okay with that.
There's just a point where you transition and...
You'll either become Roland or you become the man in black, and at least he was still making mischief and not just kind of stoic and mad.
That's fair.
We've gotten off to a start. We have just full of beans, as Henry Zabrowski would say. We're just already full of beans.
For anyone who just wandered in, our reading path is determined by the connections to other Stephen King novels as we come across them in the Dark Tower books, which is acting as our central reading station.
And for our existing quartet, the very first line of The Gunslinger sent us straight through Athene to Delane, on our own quest after the real Man in Black, not me.
It sounds like if he can hop places, I don't know that you aren't the Man in Black.
So, it's official. Flag is me, and I am Walter Paddock. Spoiler, for one of the many names, that'll come up. So I'm Matthew McConaughey.
All right.
You took the words right. You took it out of my... All right. There are much worse people to be.
I do feel like, though, in that scenario, I'm perfectly fine being Idris Elba. He's badass.
And Matthew McConaughey's wife is very hot. I think they're married.
I don't know anything about Matthew McConaughey, really.
And I say all right a lot. And the car in that commercial was pretty sick. And I don't have a car. I'll take it.
That's why you have to flee across the desert on foot.
Yeah. I'll take my Chevrolets across the desert.
I mean, they're solid transportation.
Yeah. Yeah, they haven't truly failed me yet.
So we hopped into The Eyes of the Dragon, which was originally published as a limited release in 1984, and then more broadly in February of 1987. According to Stephen King's website, he wrote what was originally called The Napkins in the hopes of having something his daughter could read, as she had little interest in his horror novels. I think she was like 13, so not a shocker.
I like that he jumped to napkins.
Right.
He's like, well, you know what? If you don't like my horror novels, I've got something for you.
I feel like they were talking about this over breakfast and he just happened to see a napkin.
I just thought he went as bland as possible.
That's also...
Well, if you don't like horror, then you're boring.
Perhaps I can interest you in a napkin.
You're basic.
So this story is just high gear fantasy. We've got a kingdom, princes, a dragon, a dangerous magician, and napkins. Napkins play an unsettling amount of, like, importance in this fucking story.
I have to say, I never read Lord of the Rings until very recently. I was not a Lord of the Rings person, and that's what it was missing, I think, for me. Napkins. Because this is hands down my favorite book, and it has been since I read it as a teenager, and napkins, that's why. Lord of the Rings just really was missing napkins. It had a lot of, like, brotherly love and creatures and adventuring and lands and words and description and a real lack of, like, decorum. I mean, now that I know more about it, it doesn't, like, the elves are all about that shit, but, like, I don't remember an elf even one time having a napkin. So
That's fair.
I feel like you're going to have to cut all of this napkin talk. And if you don't, you're going to have to leave me in telling you to cut all the napkin talk, and that's going to be amazing.
I guess we will see what happens when I listen to this back and see how it sounds. So, while professional critics enjoyed the book at the time of release, and likely still to this day, many fans were unhappy about the Eyes of the Dragons having, because they have already typecast King as to being just the horror guy. He's not allowed to do other stuff. That is all he does. He is the horror dude, and they did not like getting other shit from him. Certainly not fantasy.
Not napkins.
Not napkins. But, fun fact, the response to Eyes of the Dragon is what led King to give us Misery in June of 1987.
Is this foreshadowing our next dimensional hop?
I mean, we need to appropriately be ready to be angry at authors. We're about to read so much Stephen King. I mean, we need the guidebook for how to be mad at an author.
So we start with how to
break his legs. I think that's what happens in that book.
Well, I was going to say take down a kingdom. Like, we start with napkins and how to, I don't even know. And then we go to literally, like, death of the author. I don't know. I haven't read or seen Misery.
I only remember from way, way back when they had clips from Misery with Kathy Bates. And they show the clip of her, like, breaking the dude's leg.
That's all I know, too.
So, I think they're in a cabin, and she is pissed about what happened in the dude's book. Wants him to rewrite it.
This is going to be exciting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And I mean, really, I love fucking cheeky Stephen King re-releasing the book that caused Misery just months before he releases Misery. Just like a follow-up fuck you. I'm here for it.
It's Stephen King.
Yeah.
That's what he do.
Yeah. No, I'm 100% here for everything he did in this situation.
Yeah, we stan a petty king.
Yeah.
Well, so what actually is The Eyes of the Dragon about? You may be asking if you didn't do the homework. Oh, well, and also if all you've heard us say is napkins. So according to Stephen King's website, The Eyes of the Dragon, which was again released in February of 1987 and published by Viking Press, the blurb on the back of Eyes of the Dragon describes it in story form. Well, on his website anyways. It says, once upon a time, in the kingdom of Delane, King Roland is murdered and his son and heir Peter is framed for the crime. Peter and his loyal friends must battle an evil wizard and Peter's usurper brother Thomas for the throne. Imprisoned in a tower, Peter conceives an escape plan that will take him years to execute before taking on Flag, the powerful sorcerer who has masterminded this coup. There's also an exceptionally on-point blurb from the flap of the hardcover edition that was printed in 87, also on the website. A tale of archetypal heroes and sweeping adventures of dragons and princes and evil wizards as only Stephen King can tell it.
I am a bit disappointed in you on how you pronounced murdered.
How did I... Oh, did I not say murdered?
Yeah.
How did I...
You just said it normal. We are a hot fuzz household.
I believe murder is actually a word on its own. It's a old, like, I have found this out in recent years. It's a different, like, it's just a word. Murder.
Okay.
Like, but no, that's fair. We are in fact a hot fuzz household, and I am better than that.
So I will say, like, knowing you as long as I've known you, this book comes as a surprise that it is something you love so much. Like, you like fantasy, but you have never been, like, the fantasy bitch.
No. It's hard to explain. I'm not sure what it is with this specific book that resonates so hard with me. I think, gosh, like, it's hard to explain. Like, it feels like it really kind of turns fantasy on its head a little bit. This blurb saying that it's, you know, a tale of archetypal heroes and sweeping adventures is kind of bullshit, because they never leave Delane. It all takes place not even just in Delane, but in like their capital. They never leave. They're always just right there. And also, it was a prince who gets like shoved in a tower, and he has to figure out how to get out. And also, like, we'll get there, but the female characters are all written very strong, very cool, smarter than most of the guys. But nobody's really helpless. Even Thomas is never really completely helpless. The only person who's completely bad is Flag. Nobody is evil. Nobody is completely good. Like, Peter is probably like the best.
Peter is the most lawful good son of a bitch I've ever seen.
Oh, yeah.
And, like, I say, like, you don't seem like the fantasy person, but at the same time, I can see so much of you in the things that you prefer, because, no, Peter is such a lawful good person, and that is very much also where you tend to operate, of like, no, these are the rules.
No, it's true. Like, I think I have always seen a lot of myself in Peter, especially having as many younger siblings as I had. And then Ben's dad is also very just lawful. Like, him and his best friend are just very like it. Plus, it's easy to kind of understand. Lord of the Rings was always very like, you almost have to already know fantasy shit to get into Lord of the Rings. You don't. That's the whole point. But the fandom is very hard to break into. Like, there's a learning curve.
As many fandoms tend to be.
And there is no Eyes of the Dragon fandom. Nobody knows what it is. We haven't got there yet, but there's... I believe he actually named the character Tabitha. I can't remember. We'll get to her, but she has like a dog sled when she comes up, and I think she and like Ben's dad end up together, and she's very fucking cool. And like, even the butlers aren't helpless and are cool. Like, Dennis ends up doing stuff. Like, every single person does something, and it feels very much just like there's always something that you can do. And even if you do like the wrong thing, you can turn around and do the right thing. Like, there's just always like Peter is shoved way up in this tower, and it takes him years to get out, but he figures out a way to help himself. It's not, you don't have to go and fight some huge battle. You don't have to leave to go on an adventure. You can do it just right there. Like, it's just, I don't know. I think those are the things that just make it very, it's just very cool to me. Plus, he only ever describes that one area in Delane, but he creates such a culture and such a world there, and like, you get it. Like, you really know where you are, just right there. So, I don't know.
That is one thing I have to very much agree with.
We read up through what we would say was stanza 50. And we are calling them stanzas.
And if you are wondering why we opted for stanza versus any other thing, it's because, one, they are not labeled in the book as chapters, as you'll see some books, like chapter 1. This is nothing. They're just straight up numbers. And sometimes they can be kind of short. They're literally, I know there's some that are straight up a paragraph long. One paragraph. That's it. The parts do, however, hold a similarity to stanzas found in poetry, which allow the writer to group their ideas together. And I can see that with this very strongly, because we get full chapters, parts, stanzas, whatever you decide you personally want to call them, that focus on like singular characters at time. And the information in there doesn't always go together chronologically, but it does go together thematically. So given that The Dark Tower was built off of Browning's poem, it does lead us to believe that Stephen King may have used this approach in both The Gunslinger and The Eyes of the Dragon. Because as you do read The Eyes of the Dragon, it does feel like, you know, your classic epics, Gilgamesh, The Odyssey, Beowulf.
And those started as like oral traditions, didn't they? Or were they always written?
I think they were... I'm pretty positive the Odyssey and Gilgamesh were oral. I don't know about Beowulf.
I'm not sure. Like, I have a lot less of like a literary type background or less like knowledge, but I'm almost positive Beowulf has some kind of like oral tradition. But the reason I bring that up is because the way that the narrator is through Eyes of the Dragon, it's written like it's being spoken.
Yeah.
And so that's another reason why it makes me very much like it feels like somebody's writing down, like somebody around a fire or something.
Yeah, like the whole like I'll tell you that later. I don't know where it was at. I think there was a part where he says something about like, oh, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Well, I think it was when he was talking about like Peter's like escape or something, because he's doing a level of foreshadowing by way of saying like, oh, well, we'll get to that.
Yeah, the narrator themselves is a character and almost like refers to themselves and to the reader at times. And so it makes more sense that it's done in like, that it's stanzas, at least.
Yeah.
At least to us.
And following a great sense of oral traditions.
Yeah, exactly. But in those first 50 stanzas, we met the royal family of the Kingdom of Delaine. We have Roland, the good and asexual king. We stand an ace king. And what great early representation of asexuality. We barely knew in 1984.
Did they know then?
I mean, asexual people have always been around.
Yeah, but I mean, like, do we think King wrote that, like, with that understanding that this is, like, something people...
I don't know. I honestly don't know. So, like, according to Wiki, the asexual community is even currently pretty undocumented in academic work.
Yeah.
There were private websites that started in, like, the 90s.
Okay.
But scholars believe that it wasn't until the early 21st century that a community of self-identified asexuals began to form, aided by the popularity of online communities. And in 2001, activist David J. founded the Asexual Visibility and Education Network, AVEN, maybe AVEN, I would say AVEN, whose stated goals are creating public acceptance and discussion of asexuality and facilitating the growth of an asexual community. So I would say, well, it's always existed. A community or any level of cultural awareness really hasn't. And it's really hard for the media to get right, even today.
Yeah.
So I would be surprised. Then again, he's in Maine, and it feels like the East Coast is ahead of everybody on everything, so I don't know.
That's fair. Because it is great to see that.
Yeah. And we will have a link to AVEN if anybody wants more information on that. Just wanted to put that out there. I'm not just talking out my ass. Either way, I have no idea. I don't know. I'd be honestly surprised. There's still a lot of people who don't think that asexuality exists. Right. There's still a lot of people in the community who don't. When I say in the community, I mean the LGBTQIA plus community, who don't really believe asexuality exists. So it's not, I'd be surprised, but I have to wonder if he knew somebody who presented that way.
That was kind of what I was wondering too. Was like, maybe there's someone in his life, because obviously there are other people who are very clearly in his life in this book.
Oh yeah, no, I'm still almost positive he put his daughter in the book. And we'll get to why a little bit later, like what made the representation so, like, well, I mean, he didn't like to have sex. It's made very clear. Like, he was, 50 by the time he even got married to, like, 16-year-old Queen Sasha. I think he's, 175 by the time he finally has an heir. And he's constantly having to take, like, magical Viagra to even do it with her. I did appreciate that King puts down, like, no, like, women also want to have sex.
And that he was having the sex for Sasha.
Yeah, he would do that specifically for her, which I think is something that asexual people do often when they love somebody. It's like, well, I do this for my partner. And I believe the Avon website talks about that in their frequently asked questions, but I didn't spend that much time on it, and I'm not that sure. If you have questions, check out Avon's website. It has not only a lot of information, but a community who I'm sure would be happy to. Well, some people will be happy to answer questions. There will be some people who will be very frustrated with you. Don't badger people, and don't just go because you're curious. Figure out your own shit. But
Yep.
Either way, speaking of, we have Queen Sasha, who's a mom who just wants to raise her baby boy right and impart a really unhealthy respect for napkins and a healthy respect for respect for others, respect for himself.
Yeah. She was also a very lawful good character.
Respect for dollhouses, I don't know. And her baby boy, Prince Peter, the oldest, practically perfect in every way son, very lawful good, the trauma via napkins, dollhouse-loving, horse-saving heir apparent that parties with the commoners.
You truly want your king to be a man of the people.
Yeah, no, for real. How man of the people is it to be that, like, I'm give me a napkin, to the point where your like man butler is like, I better give him two just to be safe. This is medieval times, and people straight up lean over to vomit so that way they could fit more food in, but I better bring this man two napkins. He might have my head if I don't.
Yeah.
Very down to earth.
It's so down to earth. I mean, proper table manners are really important.
This is why I loved this book growing up and why I love this book now. Because I'm sorry, can you imagine Aragorn being like, give me a napkin? Give me a napkin right now. I don't remember his voice in the movies. That's the voice that he has in my head. I can't stand. His voice doesn't match his face. So he has Christian Bale Batman voice to me.
That's fair.
I need a napkin right now. Frodo, I'll help you get the ring to Mordor. You have my sword. I'm Batman.
That is the Batman we deserve. That is the Batman we have always needed.
I need that now in Lord of the Rings, though. I need Christian Bale dressed as Batman. Frodo. Legolas, what do your elf eyes see? Like, Arwen, I love you forever, Arwen. That's not even a good Christian Bale, I don't care. Like, no, I wish I knew any Elvish. And then we have Prince Thomas, our quintessential sniveling spare whose birth took out the beloved queen and is unfortunately a bit too much like his father for his father's liking.
No one likes that mirror held up right in their face.
You know what? I wanted to write a line about the Borgias here, and then I stopped myself. I took it out like twice, and I started writing it. Like, I kept writing it again and going, no, don't do it. Like, and then you said it. You said the line right now. How dare you?
For what it's worth, I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, I know. It doesn't matter. And then we have the reason we're all here. The reason we couldn't read our other book. Flag. The man in black himself. Who currently is the king's magician.
Hey, if you know how to position yourself into the right spot at the right time.
Yeah, and every king needs a magician. Apparently.
Every king needs a magician. So, just a side note, unimportant.
I want to know who King Charles's magician is going to be.
So, side note, thanks to Suicide Squad, I literally always want to call him Rick Flag, which then leads me to wanting to correct that and call him Rick Flair. And I really wish that wasn't in my brain, but it is, so...
Well, now let me put this in your brain. Can you imagine if it was Ric Flair? And that's who's fleeing across the desert.
You know what? Roland wouldn't be able to catch up. He'd die from the glare.
There'd be none of this man in black shit. It would just be like, what, feathers?
Feathers, sequins.
Yeah, and then Roland Deschain, not the king. The king of Delane's not getting up and doing anything. But Roland Deschain, but he could track him by the, oh yeah.
I'm sorry, Ric Flair's catchphrase is, woo!
So he can hear him even better.
Then there's Jake.
I'm sorry. Both dogs. I have to explain this.
at 30?
No. I think they need to know. I think the people deserve to know that both dogs heard that woo and ran for the window, convinced that we are being attacked.
If Ric Flair's the new Man in Black, maybe we should be concerned.
Does that make me Ric Flair?
You could be.
You know what? But it's not Ric Flair, and it's not me. It's Matthew McConaughey. And you can just hear drifting across the sands. All right.
That's not something you want to hear echoing. It kind of makes me think of like FNAF when you have to worry about Freddy showing up by the like what is it like dum 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 something like that.
It's I thought you meant like the Toreador music or whatever, but yeah, the dum dum dum. So you just hear like all rights all around you. If nobody has made that Five Nights at Freddy's like mod or whatever, I need that right now.
You have your task.
Nobody's connected me with Anthony Birch yet. I still need that. And yeah. I don't know why. I don't know why people aren't getting on this right now.
They have their mission now.
This is 2 really easy missions, I feel like.
So anyways, you may have also noticed that the king's name is Roland, which of course neither of us believe that's a coincidence.
No, like, is it that Eyes of the Dragon is just reusing imagery? Is King trying to entice his daughter to read some of his stuff? Or is it that Roland is always going to the tower around and around and around again? I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but Susan from the Western Baronies and Sasha, Susan is from the Barony of the Magies, but I think it's in the Western Baronies, if I remember right. And then Sasha from the Western Baronies, it doesn't seem like that big of a difference to me. And then the way the story is being narrated, like we said before, it sounds like it's being told like around a fire, like orally, like a big game of telephone, and things are getting changed. Or what I think more is like a little kid who asked for a story, almost like Rapunzel or Rumpelstiltskin or like other folk tales and fairy tales. So Flag eventually plays an important role with Roland Deschain's mother, and then Roland's decision to become a gunslinger very young. The story has really similar overtones to like how Peter becomes king very young. As we get further to the end of Eyes of the Dragon, I'll probably bring it up again, but I really feel like I could make the argument that this book is like the fairy tale, like orally passed down, kid-friendly version of The Dark Tower. Eddie has similarities to Ben, I feel like. Like, there's just...
This is going on the conspiracy board.
Yes, yeah, put it on your conspiracy board, because legitimately, like, there's morals. Like, you learn, there's... oh my god, there's so many different, like, morals that you end up learning throughout the book, like the napkin thing. Have respect for others, have respect for yourself, hold a certain level of decorum. Thomas has to learn, like, don't covet what others have. This is my conspiracy theory as far as Eyes of the Dragon. I think when you're putting your kid to sleep at night, this is how you tell them, like, this is the way that it's changed. There's even a tower, the Needle.
And it is a shameful walk there.
It's a shameful walk there, and then Peter gets trapped at the top of it and has to figure out how to get out, and has to do it with the help of his friends. Spoiler!
So my thought is it's a little bit more of a compromise. Like, fairy tale solid. I fully support this. I think my thought has a lot more to do with, like, when he was writing this in, like, 82, 83, he's got the gunslinger out, but did he think he wasn't going to finish the Dark Tower, and this was going to be the only way?
Yes, he did. I'm almost positive.
Because, like, I read the intro letters, or I know one's an introduction, the other one is something else, like a foreword, that he has at the beginning of The Gunslinger. And the January 2003 intro, which is titled On Being 19, is a letter from King trying to explain his initial mind frame when getting inspired towards the gunslinger through Tolkien at the age of 19. And I know, Taryn, you've told me that number comes up a lot.
Yeah.
So I think that, he's talking in that letter about people getting stuck at that age. His assertion is that a lot of people actually get stuck at that age. Personally, I think I got stuck at like 17 for a while, and then again at 27.
Yeah.
But 19, I don't remember 19. Maybe that's the point.
Yeah.
And so he was talking about himself and that, like, you always feel like time is always on your side. And so the Eyes of the Dragon, when we come to, like, some of the time frames he's referencing in that 2003 intro, it times out about with what he's estimating, now you're like 38 years old and the world is just different a bit. So he's got kids now. There's still time to complete the Dark Tower, but he's also like not ready to complete the Dark Tower. And this just felt so much like trying to channel some of those feelings, especially with when we get into the characters in The Eyes of the Dragon. We have Roland going on a tirade about just being a mediocre king, and king is capitalized, which is that normal? Like, do you often would you use that word and capitalize it that way?
So I think it's not so much using that word and capitalizing it that way. It's more that royal families usually don't have like a surname. Mm-hmm. I think when William and Harry were in school and when they were in the military and things, they used the last name, I think it was Wales, and capitalized it. Obviously, well, Wales is generally capitalized, but you wouldn't use like Prince. They're essentially using their title.
Okay.
Now when like William's kids were going to school, they were using, I think it was Cambridge, because their parents were the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge. There's multiple dukes and duchesses. You wouldn't use Duke or Duchess for your last name because there's many, but you use the title, you use Cambridge. I want to say when Elizabeth II was in the military, I think she used Windsor, which is, like, she is a princess. Like, she was straight up the heir at that point, but she used her house name. She used Windsor, and it was capitalized. So I think here, King is just not giving them a house name.
Okay. Yeah, and as we move forward, then we have Peter playing with Sasha's dollhouse, and he creates the King family.
And Peter's so little at the time. The idea is, my dad is the king. He's King Roland. So he's recreating his father and his mother, but he only knows his dad as the king. So he just made King the last name. I do think it's also, because Stephen King puts himself in so many books, I think it's also a little bit of a, see, look, my last name is King. But I think it was mostly meant, that's how I took it, especially because Roland goes, oh, he's just keeping his mother alive because he's telling himself stories of him and his dad and whatever.
The extremities that King Roland feels his age and looks at everything he doesn't like about himself in Thomas also feels very raw and very real. Given that King's sons are both born by this point, I just question, is he King Roland? Built off of the Roland he originally made for himself at 19. And with a kid who wasn't into his current set of books, was he feeling insecure about his own accomplishments? Because obviously we all love Stephen King, but someone so close to you and them going, I don't want to read your books, Dad. Like that, even at I think he mentions that she was 13 at this point. That still kind of probably hurt a little bit.
Yeah.
I can't imagine how hard that was. But, also, completely side note, while I was looking this shit up, I learned that Joe Hill was Stephen King's son, and I had no idea. I haven't read anything by Joe Hill, but I do have a copy of 20th Century Ghosts that's been on my TBR for months, and so many of his other books I keep wanting to read, so that was just cool to find out.
I think not just his son is an author either, I think his wife and
both of his sons and his wife are. I don't know much about his daughter. There's not a lot of info about her out there. Maybe she wants a private life.
I can't blame her.
So, but yes, his wife is an author. I don't know anything about what she tends to write, though.
I think you have a really solid point as far as King Roland being this very mediocre guy, and maybe Stephen King seeing a little bit of himself in that, because in reality, Thomas is not shitty. It's that Roland kind of he wrote both of them as good characters.
When the narrator repeats to us several times, Thomas is a good boy.
Yeah.
Thomas is a good boy.
Thomas is a good boy. I think it's interesting, like, Flag is very different, I feel like, in this than he is in The Gunslinger, when he's just the man in black. And I wonder, because Flag is able to get at Roland and he's able to get at Thomas, but Pierce always sees right through him. That's why he has to get at Thomas. It almost feels like Flag is like a depression metaphor or something. But he's just, I don't know. He's just very different. But he does kind of have Roland's ear here. And he has a plan. He just causes mischief. He almost is like he almost made me think of Loki, but he's a lot more, not Loki from, I mean like legitimate mythology Loki, where his only goal is mischief, but he's more evil than that. Loki is a very like neutral person, whereas like Flag causes mischief to cause harm. He wants to cause
chaotic evil.
Yes, yeah, he's a chaotic evil. I want to know, well, I think we do know who Flag's patron is. As far as being a warlock, we will find that out later. I really want to know if Stephen King played D&D, legitimately, because I feel like a lot of these characters are written pretty specifically.
Well, I do believe, like, to the point of lawsuits happening, so much of D&D was based off of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
So I feel like he should have played it.
Yeah, that's fair.
I need him to play D&D with Anthony Birch and Matt Mercer, and I want to see what happens.
And Stephen Colbert.
Stephen
Colbert deserves to be there. Oh my god, dreams.
Yeah.
Either way, Flag is wanting to cause mischief because he is a chaotic evil warlock. His goal is a peasant uprising, and he can't do it in Roland's time. He can't probably accomplish it, but he's pretty sure he can accomplish it with Thomas. But Sasha's kind of fucking that up. Like, that's why he has to use Thomas, because Sasha was fucking it up.
Sasha just kept getting in the way.
Roland loved her, and so sometimes she could convince Roland to do good stuff. Roland was a true neutral. He just kind of wanted to be left alone, and he could be convinced to do shit sometimes.
He didn't ask for this life.
No, and his mom died choking. That's the other thing. Like, there's orbs involved, which will come up later, and, like, the mom dies when one crashes down, and now things are in danger. Like, it's just, I'm telling you. But
either way, Sasha's a problem, and she's in the way.
Yes.
We gotta get rid of her.
But getting rid of Sasha won't get rid of all of Flag's problems, because as we mentioned, Peter, he's too much like his mom. So Flag also has to get rid of Peter, because he needs Thomas, as we've mentioned. And so he's going to use the dragon sand. We didn't even talk about the dragon.
Oh yeah, so Roland kills a dragon, and that gets him hot enough to go and conceive Peter.
It's like the only time he doesn't need Viagra.
Yes, and he, like, Peter comes out practically perfect.
So, I want to say right now, like, that doesn't preclude Roland from being asexual.
No.
Like, asexuality is a spectrum, and you can still have moments where you're like, yeah, that sounds alright. That sounds good. Roland got hot like one time in his life.
And that was his rock star fucking moment. He went on stage, he performed, and then he came off, and he needed to find Sasha, but in this case, he killed a dragon.
Oh, I thought you meant the conception of Peter was his rock star moment.
No, his rock star moment was killing that dragon, and then he had to get that energy off.
Yeah, the dragon has a name, okay? His name is Niner. It's very rude that you're not using it.
Fine. The dragon's name is Niner.
Yes.
but he kills Niner.
Yeah, he murdered Niner. Niner was minding their own business. We don't actually know the gender of the dragon. They don't make that very clear. No. And then they all pissed on it. They all peed on the dragon. They all just peed on Niner.
Look, Sasha was able to teach Peter manners and respect. She was not able to necessarily pass that all on to Roland. She couldn't get him to use a fucking napkin.
Yeah, that's true. Rude. Either way, we're going to use dragon sand, which has absolutely nothing to do with Niner, to frame Peter for regicide.
Yeah. And I guess for reference, dragon sand just burns through fucking everything.
I want to know if it's like kinetic sand, where like you can mold it. I guess you wouldn't know because you can't touch it and you can't breathe it and you can't do anything with it. And it's probably not sand-like.
I wonder if a dragon could, though.
I wonder if dragons get high on dragon sand. Honestly, I feel like it's probably something like, I don't know why that thought came to me. I think because it's like granular and it's like
dragon snorting it.
Yeah, they're having a party with it. They're like, we don't call this dragon sand, we call it like flim flam or some shit. Like, you're hoarding it.
Anyways.
I was picturing like Matthew McConaughey being dragon fire melted. Not all right.
Anyway. So there is a trial, and there's an interesting scene where they tell Peter, you are technically king, so you can kind of make this go away. But Peter refuses, and the one thing that convinces the judge that Peter is guilty is that he cries. So, Taryn, you know more about royalty and crime than I do, and while reading, you mentioned something about regicide as a form of thieving. So my first question is, and definitely like set the stage a bit with more explanation on the thieving thing, if you will. If we talk real world, regicide to take the throne, can a ruler just kind of decide to ignore things? And if there have been people who've done, regicide, what is the public opinion?
So I don't remember I think I went off on a tangent about how like all crime is technically a form of theft, and it is like, the way that, if I remember right from school, the way that the British system and thus the American legal system and most English-speaking legal systems are like, because the UK is an empire and the sun never sets on the British Empire. But anyways,
don't they only get like 5 hours of daylight?
What, Britain? No, it's because there's so many territories all around the world that the sun is always up on one of the British territories.
Oh, okay.
So the sun never sets on the British Empire, because if it sets in one place, like if it sets in Britain, it's up in Australia, or it's up in Canada, or it's up like...
Gotcha.
So it's always up somewhere that Britain fucking owns. So, but either way, the idea is like, you're either like thieving from God, which is heresy, or you're thieving from the king, which is treason. And one is worse than the other, or some shit. Or you're thieving from like, I'm stealing from you, which isn't that bad. And it's not that big of a deal. And so I think that's like how you get like misdemeanors, felonies, heresy, like I believe that's how it used to be said. And so the idea is, if you kill a king, you're essentially like, it's murder, but it's also like stealing. I don't remember what I said as far as regicide specifically being thieving.
You're stealing from the country.
Yeah, exactly. Like, but it is treason.
Okay.
And treason is a form of theft because you're stealing from the king. That's why treason is such a problem, if I remember right.
So all I keep thinking is, okay, so all crime is thieving, and it just makes me think of basically all, like, rectangles and rhombuses are squares.
Yeah.
But not the other way.
No. Like, that's the most important thing, so this is me not talking out my ass. That is all, like, I have a lot less schooling and a lot less, like, anything as far as that. As far as, like, shit where I, like, know what the fuck I'm talking about, it's complicated when you talk about, like, killing a king to become a king. You can't just commit out-and-out murder. So Delane is presented as what's called an absolute monarchy. An absolute monarchy means that the king has no, like, there's no parliament, there's no council, there's no, like, he has advisors who can give him, like Flag, he has people who can give him advice, but he doesn't have to take it. That's why Flag can be so pissed that he's getting advice from Sasha. He can just do what he wants. He can, like if I was an absolute monarch, I could just kind of go, off with your head. That's what a lot of people think a king can do or a ruler can do. In the kind of quote unquote Western world, there aren't like any today. Not in like Europe or anything, as far as I know. There could, I don't know, there could be like some tiny little Genovia or something where like Anne Hathaway is just like fucking kill him, guillotine. I don't know, but
I love the idea of it being Anne Hathaway too.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like, especially because, like, she did that Tim Burton Alice in Wonderland. And I don't think she did the Red Queen. I think she did the White Queen or something.
I think so.
White Duchess.
Yeah, no, Helena Bonham Carter was the weird one. So.
What else is new?
Yeah. You can basically cut and paste what I just said anywhere, and it would be accurate. So.
But yeah, just Anne Hathaway sitting there going, no! Off with their heads!
Yeah. But, and I apologize because it's Tudor time.
What have I wrought?
Yeah. Oh no, this will be fun, because the only way that I can really think of off the top of my head that someone could kill a king and become a king now, not even now, but like
back in the day.
Yeah, kind of, is in like open battle.
Okay.
And like the first battle, that's why I said it's Tudor time, is the first one that really comes to mind that like I know just is the Battle of Bosworth Field, where Richard III lost his crown. That's the really famous one where he's like shouting supposedly, "My kingdom for a horse," because he gets unhorsed, and then they just found his body in like 2011, and the soldiers were not kind to him. And that's where Henry VII, like, he was just Henry Tudor at the time, and he killed the shit out of Richard III. But even then, like, Henry VII probably didn't have any direct contact during that battle. Like, Jasper Tudor, like, maybe, but it was just soldiers who killed Richard III. And then Henry Tudor ended up, like, backdating his reign by like a day before that battle, and then declared that Richard III had actually like committed treason and done all these things, so that way he looked more legitimate. I think King is playing on a lot of preconceived notions people have about how royalty works. That you can just like do it like Futurama and like go up and like drink somebody and then become emperor.
I love that episode.
Right?
It was a solid episode.
And I mean, there was a lot of, like, the book really makes it seem like Delane is, like, pre-Magna Carta. And I'm not going to bore you with everything about Magna Carta. Just know that, like, post 1215, the king can't just do whatever he wants. At least not in England. France was a little more, like, France was an absolute monarchy for a while, but even then, there was a lot, but that's why you have, like, the 3 estates in France, and you can't just do anything you want, and the reason that matters is because if you kill a king, even if you become king, there's rules. That being said, I think in the scene after he's, like, killed. He didn't kill his dad anyways, but after they all think that he's killed his dad, even if he is king, if you've committed a crime as a prince, that should preclude you from, like, taking the throne, because you committed a crime that stops you. Like, he doesn't get to be king after that. He stepped down. Well, no, not because he stepped down. They ask him to step down so that way they can find out if he did bad. What I'm saying is, gosh, now I'm getting all...
Okay. So I only understand rulership so well. You are the history person here, not me.
Yeah.
So
education's gotta pay for itself somehow. Like,
to try and like make sure I understand this, I'm gonna frame it into like a concept I currently understand to any extent, which is what kind of rulership do we have in comparison to something like Game of Thrones? I haven't read all those books. I've just watched the shows.
So you know how in King's Landing he has like a council and they all sit around the table. I can't remember what it's called now.
I think it's like the little council or something.
Yeah,
I don't know what.
The
Is that
small,
right? Okay.
the small council or whatever.
Right.
Roland doesn't have one of those.
Okay.
He just gets to do whatever he wants.
So it's more like how the Targaryens wanted to sort of rule?
Yeah, maybe. Or even like how the Starks are in Winterfell.
Okay.
How just kind of whatever they get to say, whatever they say goes. They just kind of do what they want. Now the Starks have, like, obviously in King's Landing, they'll ignore that. Imagine there's no King's Landing and there's just whoever is in Winterfell.
Okay.
And they kind of just go, hey, guess what? This is how shit's gonna go down.
Okay.
That's probably the best way to think of it. And then imagine, instead of Ned Stark going and getting his head cut off. Spoilers. He, like, Robb Stark, and again, Peter isn't innocent, but this is the easiest way to describe this. Robb Stark poisons him. Like, he doesn't get to then become the Lord of Winterfell. Even if he becomes the Lord of Winterfell, he doesn't get to stay there. They go, no, you killed the last one. That precludes you. Like, you are in trouble now. Like, you're not worthy of taking this role anymore. I think the fear in the text, like the fear in the book that Pena has is, well, you're king now, and you're going to just say, like, Dennis did it. And then he's going to, like, you're just going to pin it on somebody else because you're king, and now you can do that because you have absolute power. And you can just go, well, I decided it was you, and now you're the one who did it. I think, like, that's what I'm assuming is the issue.
Okay, so then my second question is, why does crying seal the deal here? This kid just learned that their parent died, and the judge just goes the route of, oh, you can murder, but you can't handle the murder.
My best guess is toxic masculinity. Like,
valid.
Yeah, I mean, every other time that they show him being kingly, he's being, like, stoic and
kind of a dick sometimes, like, bossy.
Yes. And they're like, no, this is a king. I don't think it's in this part, but later, like, he gets in like a bar brawl, kind of. And they're like, yeah, that's a king. Like, it's bad. And, like, so Roland Deschain in the Dark Tower series is also very stoic. And he's very, like, manly.
I mean, the gunslinger in general, like, the imagery, looking at the cover of at least this book, we got, it's just all masculine.
Yeah, it's honestly, I kind of, personally, I think it's weak writing.
Okay.
I think he just needed to get from A to C, and so he had to blur B a little bit because he didn't have a better thing. And I also think it comes back to that whole idea of, like, morals. What are we teaching right here? Well, we're teaching boys. Suck it up. That's my best take, because I got no fucking idea. Like, it seems, I think they take it as a sign of guilt, like you're crying because you're guilty. I accused you of this and you feel fucking guilty.
And I could see that to an extent. I just was like, do we give no leeway?
I think Stephen King just didn't listen to true crime podcasts in 1984. And he didn't know that, one, behavior is not an indicator of guilt. And two, that's not how guilty people act anyways.
I was just thinking, what would this book be like if it was written today?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that if it were written in 2023, it would be different. I think he'd use something else to show Peter's weakness in the moment. But I don't know.
Okay, so Peter is found guilty of regicide. He chooses not to overrule it. Like, he makes a statement about, like, oh yeah, no, I will face my trial and crap like that. So during all of this, as Peter lands in the tower in the Needle, he is locked away. During this time, though, Thomas has fallen ill because he saw everything. He saw everything. He had seen Flag actually poison King Roland through the eyes of Niner.
Was it through the eyes of the dragon?
You told me I needed to use the dragon's name.
I know, but here now, it's the title of the book.
Yes, Thomas sees Flag poison King Roland through the eyes of the dragon.
The dragon.
Roland has mounted the head of Niner. That's how this happens, is the dragon's head is mounted as a trophy in his room. I'm a little questioning of like how this has worked exactly architecturally.
Oh, because servants weren't allowed to ever be seen. So most like really fancy places have like secret servant corridors.
So they put a spy head?
I mean, how else are they going to be able to watch and know that you need them without you seeing them?
Fair enough, I guess. Either way, the trophy is mounted. And...
Yeah, no, it doesn't, unless Flag did it. Flag is the one who knows about it.
I have questions about this castle. Yeah.
Why did Peter cry? Why is Peter crying an indication of his guilt? I'm telling you, like, sometimes point A to point C, the B gets really blurred. Like,
that's fair, because legitimately, I understand, like, the passageways and stuff like that. It's the fact that you can see through the trophy's eyes, this mounted trophy, like, there's just a little window.
Yeah, why was there a tower to just shove Rapunzel in?
Yes, that's
like,
fair.
Why is Cinderella's shoes made of glass and, like, that's a good thing? I'm telling you, it's
okay.
Just,
I'm suspending my disbelief here. Either way, Thomas is able to see through the eyes of the dragon, and he watches the whole thing, and it makes him feel ill.
And we end with stanza 50 with Thomas's coronation instead of Peter's.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. I mean, they were putting all that work into Peter's coronation. They weren't going to, like...
You don't want to toss it all away.
The king is dead. Long live the king. Shit goes on. Flag has invested a lot of time into Thomas. Might even say groomed him. Somehow always managing to visit the boy when Thomas needed someone to talk to, showing him secret spaces around the castle, terrifying him with bats, and showing him the peepee eyes, or the peeping eyes.
Peepee eyes are a very different thing.
Yeah. He's very drawn to Thomas, which is interesting. I don't know. I find it interesting how drawn to Thomas that he is. It's weird. You should not, as a grown man, have a 9-year-old as your best friend.
A grown man who's lived several lifetimes, as it is made very clear that he is an old motherfucker.
No, for real.
I can say that there were 2 scenes that kind of stood out to me. I want your thoughts on them a little bit here as well. They both lead me to The Shining. The first one that kind of takes me there, particularly with Thomas, is that he thinks really hard at his dad while he's getting poisoned. And Roland almost seems like he can hear him, he hesitates during the poisoning.
Yeah.
And he seems like he's got some sort of connection with Thomas in that moment. Do you think that is some kind of a coincidence? Or because you have said that The Shining plays a role, and we've talked about, is Carrie's ability a shining?
Yeah.
And the source of her magical powers that scare people. Do you think it's possible that these short, bow-legged, unimpressive men that Thomas and Roland are, do you think that they shine?
Yes. I had never considered it before. I only just watched The Shining 2 minutes ago. It's very new to me, but I did read The Talisman as a kid, which is his book with Peter Straub, which I'm sure we will also have to read at some point. Yeah, I think so. I definitely think so. Until you brought it up to me, it never really occurred to me, but I do think Thomas probably has a shine. I think, strangely enough, that Roland has a shine. They're both expert hunters, of all things. They're both expert bowmen, and I wonder if that has something to do with it. So Roland was a very lonely little boy who lived inside his mind a lot with a mother who was this queen who was...
This is Gunslinger Roland, correct?
No, this is Roland. Okay. This is King Roland.
Okay, I want to make sure we got the right Roland.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about this Roland. Okay. I'm talking about his father, who was just... He had a mother who was this queen that everybody loved, who was amazing, and I think he probably grew up. He probably grew up very lonely, and... Because generally when you're a prince, you're set apart. I think that's why he took his son down. like to these festivals and things and liked to be with the common people, because I imagine he probably couldn't. And then Thomas also said he was a good boy but a lonely boy. And did you notice that they both have massive drinking problems? And Thomas has started by 9. I just thought that was really interesting, because that was a big thing in The Shining. And I think the dad in The Shining was the one with the shine. Like, what's his... Is he Jack?
Jack. I would argue that they both shine.
Yeah.
Because I do believe that that's why Jack drank so fucking much.
Yes, and Roland drinks like crazy. Thomas drinks like crazy. Peter doesn't. Flag is drawn to Roland. Flag is drawn to Thomas. Peter won't have anything to do with Flag. Peter is not a huge drinker. I don't think Peter has a shine. I think Roland and Thomas both do.
Peter can be perfect in every other way, but I do not believe that Peter got himself a shine.
Yeah, and Flag is just drawn to Thomas, and he can't explain why. And he does things. He ends up showing Thomas Niner, and he can't explain why he wants to show him those eyes.
Shenanigans star. That's what I'm calling it. It's a shenanigans star.
And it ends up, like, spoilers, being his downfall.
Yeah.
And why? Like, why would he, when he's been so careful and everything? I think that's why. I think that you are absolutely onto something there.
Yeah. No, I just feel that. So the other scene that kind of made me think of The Shining was specifically on the copy that I have. It's on page 76, which I have a paperback version. This is a quote from that page. And he knew the caskets those evil, frightening ideas were buried in may rot, and the nastiness inside may leak out after a while and poison the water. And when the well of the mind is badly poisoned, we call the result insanity. So this isn't directly to The Shining, but it made me think of Dr. Sleep, specifically the movie. I haven't read that book yet. I expect to read it given everything else here.
Yes. Yeah.
But the way that Danny learns to deal with stuff, at least in the film, that he carries from the Overlook is those chests that he's like storing all of the badness in. And since that is what Thomas is being taught to file away the negative thoughts and feelings that he's having, it really just kept making me think of those scenes where you would cut to the chest like shutting close all of a sudden. From Dr. Sleep. And I know that when we watched that one, you mentioned that Rose the Hat could even possibly be Flag.
Yeah. I can't... God, I wish I could remember why. I can't remember everything that stood out as far as what made her... I know the name is a big tip-off. So the Dark Tower is surrounded by a sea of singing roses. But also in our world, the tower is a rose in a lot, in like an empty lot. It's just a single rose. So roses are big imagery. So the fact that her name is Rose is a big deal. And I think that there's further rose, because I know there's even like a book like Rose Red or something like.
Yeah.
There's a ton of rose imagery that he uses.
Rose Matter?
Yeah. That's, yes. Okay. I kept wanting to say Rose Redder, and I'm like, that's not right. Her being the ringleader that way, it'll come up. It'll come up, yeah. And I think Wolves of the Kala, and probably Song of Susanna. I never read I'm telling you right now, I never read Song of Susanna. I read parts of it. I got really bored. I was a shithead teenager. We'll get there. And if you've seen the movie, the Dark Tower movie, like...
Yeah.
That's the shit. Flag, yeah, Shenanigans Dar is correct.
Yeah.
Evil, chaotic Shenanigans Dar.
Fair.
And the way that she is, at least in the movie, I'm excited to read the book and see what might be different.
I am too. If she were Flag, or something like Flag, that might explain some of the unexplainable attraction to Thomas that Flag experiences, because her and her group fed off of shines.
Yeah.
And if he's finding a way to feed off of shine, that's why he needed Roland, that's why he needed Thomas, you know. Maybe. So, yeah. I mean, okay, final thoughts. Does Thomas have a shine? And does Flag potentially feed on shines?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I fully believe that Thomas has a shine. I think it's why he's a better shot than Peter. I think it's why he's a better shot than Peter, just like Roland. I think it's why he drinks, so that way he can dampen the shine. And I think it's 110% why Flag is so drawn to him. And I promise you it's going to come up later. The fact that he has a shine and that Flag is drawn to, feeds on, and uses shines. It's going, like, I am telling you, and I am telling all the listeners, I'm telling, like, if you're already in the kata, you know, and if you're not, you're going to find out. It comes up later. So, and with that, we are really set up for shit to, like, we are set up for shit to go down.
Absolutely.
And the last half of this book is like rolling down a hill. It just goes. It's been really exciting for me to get to start here. This is not only my favorite Stephen King book, it's my favorite book just in general. And I really feel like it doesn't get enough love, but I feel like everybody probably thinks that about their favorite book. I don't care. I don't feel like it gets enough love. One thing it really lacks, though, is a parent pearl-clutching tarot card reading that, you know, starts me down a path towards Satan and recycling. So we're going to keep drawing a card every episode until it gets boring to see, you know, where it gets us. And to make sure we're doing our part to convert souls to Satan. Numbers are down as of last quarter. We need to get... So, last episode, the card we pulled was the Ace of Cups. It signified a fresh start and opening ourselves to what others have to offer. And so we're going to pull this episode's card and continue on our reading journey. So Kat is our resident tarot. We're going with tarot.
Whatever you want.
All right. I have pulled the Knight of Cups.
So we're keeping a cup theme.
Yeah, very cuppy.
The Knight of Cups. The Knight is representative of someone who is in tune with his emotions. He will listen to his heart regardless of if it's logical or not.
Wow. So apparently it's very illogical for us to keep doing this, but we're going to do it anyways. Sounds right.
Yeah, fair. You know what, though? We are staying in tune with our emotions.
Yeah, 100%.
So...
Well, if you are going to continue down this journey with us, we will be reading from stanza 51 through stanza 83 for next time. And until then, go now. There are other worlds than these.
You can find us on Instagram at Mini Constant Worlds.